Good evening. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this very special event here at Evangelische Akademie Frankfurt. My name is Margret Fröhlich, and I'm pleased to host tonight's event together with my cooperation partner, Christoph Kehr von Plettenberg, from the German Council on Foreign Relations. 4 years and 2 days ago, Russia started the full-scale war against Ukraine. 4 years in which the Ukrainian population has resisted with tremendous courage and stamina Putin's will to destroy, subjugate, and extinguish the nation of Ukraine. Russia's war against Ukraine is the most ferocious and cynical war in Europe since World War II, as well as the longest lasting. Ukraine is a part of Europe, and the political fate of Ukraine will inevitably have repercussions on us here in Germany and on the future of Europe. With this event, we wish to increase awareness for Ukraine's ongoing struggle for freedom and democracy, and for the endurance of the Ukrainian population during these cold weeks of winter, during which the population must withstand Russia's merciless bomb attacks on Ukraine's heat and power plants. I feel very honored to present to you tonight the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Oleksandra Matwijtschuk. Ms. Matwijtschuk is a human rights lawyer, head of the Center for Civil Liberties in Kiev, that works to defend freedom and human dignity in Ukraine and the OSCE. She's the author of a number of reports to various UN bodies, the Council of Europe, the European Union, the OSCE, and the International Criminal Court. After the beginning of the Russian full-scale invasion, Ms. Matwijtschuk, together with other partners, created the Tribunal for Putin initiative that documents international crimes committed in all regions of Ukraine, including the occupied territories, under the statute of the International Criminal Court. The Nobel Peace Prize is the most prestigious among her accolades. She received the prize in 2022 for the work of her organization, the Center for Civil Liberties. Please give Oleksandra Matwijtschuk a warm welcome. I'm equally delighted that Sabine Adler accepted our invitation to lead tonight's conversation with Oleksandra Matwijtschuk. Sabine Adler is a renowned journalist who works for the radio broadcast channel Deutschlandfunk, specializing in Eastern Europe. As a foreign correspondent, she has first-hand experience in Kiev, Warsaw, and Moscow. She's the author of a number of books, and tonight we have a book table organized by Büchergilde, where you can purchase a copy of her book on Ukraine called Die Ukraine und wir, and get it signed in the end. Welcome, Sabine Adler. Before I give Christoph Kehr von Plettenberg the opportunity to speak to you, I would like to thank our sponsors. The Association of Evangelische Akademie Frankfurt, the support organization of our academy, the Frankfurt Lawyers Association, and PwC, one of the leading auditing and consulting services organizations in Germany. Thanks to the latter, we can offer you tonight a translation of the English language discussion into German. In order to tune into the discussion being dubbed into German, use your mobile phone, plug in your headphones, and follow the instructions that you see on the sheet that was on your seat. Now, I give the word to Christoph Kehr von Plettenberg.
Thank you very much, dear Mrs. Fröhlich. You almost said everything, so I don't have to say so much anymore. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, also from me. On behalf of the German Council on Foreign Relations, it is my great pleasure to welcome you tonight. As co-host of this evening, I am very grateful that you have joined us here at the Römerberg for this timely discussion, Ukraine and its fight for freedom and democracy. We meet today in a time when Europe's security and the future of democratic resilience remain under severe pressure. Since the full-scale invasion began on 24th of February 2022, 4 years and 2 days ago, Ukraine has been defending its own and also our freedom, while the Ukrainian civil society has carried an extraordinary burden day after day. We are very honored to welcome you, dear Oleksandra Matwijtschuk, human rights lawyer, Nobel Peace Prize laureate, and head of the Center for Civil Liberties in Kiev. Your work stands for principled courage, documenting violations, advocating for accountability, and keeping the focus on human dignity, even in the darkest circumstances. Thank you so much for that. We are equally pleased that she will be in conversation with Sabine Adler, the renowned journalist from Deutschlandfunk, whose reporting has already helped many listeners to understand that the realities of this war, and its implications here in Europe. This evening's discussion is obviously being held in English with translation into German. We hope it will be a space for careful listening and honest questions about life under attack, the strength of civil society, and what sustained support from Germany and Europe should look like. Thank you to the Evangelische Akademie and especially Mrs. Dr. Fröhlich and your team for a partnership which we have, I think, for almost nearly 10 years now. Thank you so much for that. And to everyone who helped making this evening possible. With that, let me hand over to our speakers and wish us an insightful conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Good evening. It is a great pleasure to be here in this nice place in the heart of Frankfurt, in this historical place, the Römerberg. Is this also part of Römerberg? Yeah? Okay. So, as a Berliner, I don't know, but now it's better. Oleksandra and me, we have known each other for more than 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, I haven't counted. And it's always a pleasure to meet, and it's always an occasion to learn a lot about society, about human rights, how to protect human rights, and how to be precise in watching who is obeying the human rights and who is violating human rights. And Oleksandra, we are entering the 5th year of the full-scale invasion, the 12th year of the war in Ukraine. Can we start with an overview about the victims, the deaths, the casualties? And I have to say, it's always really a big pleasure to talk with Oleksandra, but I warn you, it's always, again, very sad at the same time. So we unfortunately start with the sad part of this conversation.
Thank you very much for providing me a floor, and thank you for coming. It's a huge honor for me to address to this distinguished audience. I'm very grateful for organizers that make it happen. When large-scale war started, we united our efforts with dozens of organizations from different regions. We built a national network of local documentators. We covered the whole country, including the occupied territories. And working together, we jointly documented more than 98,000 episodes of war crimes. And 98,000, it's a huge amount, but still just a tip of iceberg. Because Russia uses war crimes as the methods of warfare. Russia are trying to break people's resistance and occupy the country by the tool which I call the immense pain on civilian population. So we document something more than just violations of Geneva and Hague conventions. We document human pain. And while this war turns people into the numbers, what we are literally doing, we are returning people their names. Because people are not numbers. And life of each person matters. Let me share with you one story from our database. This is a story of 10-year-old boy Ilya from Mariupol. When Russians tried to siege the city, they didn't allow the International Committee of Red Cross to open green corridors and to evacuate civilians. Hence, Ilya and his mother, like dozens of thousands of other people, had to hide in the basement of their building from Russian shelling. They melted snow to have water. They made fires to cook at least some food. But when supplies ran out, they were forced to go out, and suddenly they appeared in the center of Russian shelling. Ilya's mother was hit in her head, and the boy's legs were torn. With the last strength, his mother took her son to the friend apartment. It was no medical assistance, because prior to this, Russians deliberately destroyed maternity hospital and entire medical infrastructure in Mariupol. So in this friend apartment, they just lay down on a couch and they hugged each other. They were lying like this for several hours, and this 10-year-old boy told to my colleague how his mother was frozen and died right in his arms. This is just one story of our database, so we deal with enormous horror, and Russians committed this horror deliberately. And all this hell which we face in Ukraine, it's a result of total impunity which Russia enjoyed for decades. They committed horrible atrocities in Chechnya, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Mali, in Libya, in Syria, in other countries of the world. They have never been punished. They believe they can do whatever they want. So we document the stories not just for national archives, but for justice. We are doing this to break the circle of impunity which Russia enjoyed for decades. Not just for people in Ukraine, not just for people who have already suffered from other countries from the Russian war crimes, but in order to prevent a next Russian attack to the next nation.
Oleksandra, coming back to Ukraine and this winter, was a really harsh winter, much colder than in many, many years before. And what you endured this winter was cold terror. It was poor, cold terror from Russian side. Would you describe the destruction of energy facilities also as a war crime, or goes that too far?
You are totally right. This is fourth winter of large-scale war, and it's very difficult. Russians are deliberately destroying energy grid, the very infrastructure that civilians depend on their survival. In February, the temperature dropped down up to 25 degrees Celsius. Ukrainian cities are literally freezing. Millions of people in my country have limited access or no access to heat, to water, to electricity, to connection. International Criminal Court qualified these actions as crimes against humanity and started their second criminal procedures based on this fact. Let me illustrate what's going on in the country just with two stories. The first is my personal. When the Russians first time strike energy grid in 2022, and we first time had blackout, I found myself in my flat without heat, water, and electricity. And my husband brought to the kitchen 2 bricks. I looked at him and asked, "Honey, what you are doing? Why we need 2 bricks in our kitchen?" And he answered, "You know what? We are blessed to have gas oven. Let's experiment. We will try to warm these bricks on this gas oven, and we will see how long these bricks will give back the warmth." And I looked at this and told, "Oh my God, we return to the Middle times." And it's not easy to live like this, because you can't find the practical answer to very concrete question. For example, how to warm milk for your newborn baby. But I want you to know that Ukrainians, even in such circumstances, we are not just victims, we are fighters. So, second story. In 2022, when it's just happened that Russians start to use this barbarian tactic, a photo appeared in internet of an ordinary Kiev school teacher. She was wearing a warm winter jacket and a hat, and she was sitting tiptoe near a metal stick where she placed her computer, near a shop where generator was running, and that is why she can get internet access. Right outside, in this freezing cold, this school teacher sitting tiptoe near her computer and was giving lectures to the student. Can you imagine? When I looked to this photo, I told to myself, Russians come to take everything from us, our land, our democracy, our freedom, our future, the education of our children, and this ordinary Kiev school teacher decided to give them nothing. So this is the bright illustration of the source of resilience of Ukrainian people. Because our resilience is in self-organization, in local democracy, in agency of ordinary people, and this belief that all our efforts matters. And since this time, I know that when you can't rely on the legal instruments or when you can't rely on international system of peace and security, you can still rely on people. Because ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Ordinary people can change history.
And in this time, during this time, would you say that you experience as well solidarity from your Western partners? I remember that there were huge initiatives in Germany to help, to deliver, for example, generators to Kiev or to other mostly partner cities between Germany and Ukraine. Can you describe what this kind of support makes Ukrainians be assured that they aren't alone in this work?
It's a key thing, and thank you for asking about this. 4 years ago, these days, I was in Kiev. I refused to evacuate, and with a part of my team, we continued our work on the ground when Russians tried to circle my city. It was a very difficult time. I remember that we greet every morning like a victory, because we managed to stand just for one more night. And I remember how international organizations evacuated their personnel. Because not just Putin, but also international partners were confident that Ukraine has no potential to resist to such enormous military power that just in 3 or 4 days the country will fall. But ordinary people remained and started to do extraordinary things. It were ordinary people who helped to survive under artillery's fire. It were ordinary people who took people out from the ruined cities. It were ordinary people who broke through the encirclement to provide humanitarian aid. And suddenly, it became obvious that ordinary people fighting for freedom and their human dignity are stronger than even the second army in the world. But this is just one part of the story. The second part is that since the first days of the war, we have support of ordinary people from Germany, from ordinary people from France, from ordinary people from United States and other countries. So let me use this opportunity to tell my sincere gratitude. We survived because of you. Because all this for years, you supported Ukrainians in our fight for freedom. And yes, it's very important to know that you are not alone when you're fighting with such enormous military power. And we know that ordinary people in Germany, they informing about what's going on in Ukraine and try to keep Ukraine in the priority of agenda. We know that you collect money to provide humanitarian aid. We are grateful that you welcomed Ukrainian refugees, majority of them women and children, and they face a warm welcome, amongst them my mother. I'm grateful personally. I know what solidarity means. Solidarity is infrastructure. And when this month in Kiev, I met with volunteers from Denmark, from Germany, from Czech Republic, who came to bring generator, who spent Christmas, New Year, and other holiday with us in a prison in Kiev, not with their families. It means a lot. It's real infrastructure of human solidarity, which help us to keep going. So, thank you.
Oleksandra, at the same time, we in Germany and in other countries have a discussion that the war can be over if arms supplies have been stopped. What do you think about this? Is this a way we should try after 4 years of war? Is that so simple?
There is some naive perception that if Ukrainians will stop resisting, it will be a peace. I'm sorry. People in Ukraine dream about peace. But peace doesn't come when a country that was invaded stops resisting. That's not peace. That's Russian occupation. And occupation is the same war, just in another form. Occupation doesn't decrease human suffering. Occupation just makes human suffering invisible. And Russian occupation, it's not just changing one state flag to another state flag. Russian occupation means enforced disappearances, torture, rape, denial of your identity, forcible adoption of your own children, filtration camps, and mass graves. Let me illustrate it with a story. This is a story of Father Stepan Podolchak from small village Kalanchak in Kherson region. This village is under Russian occupation since 2022. Russians came to his house and took Father Stepan Podolchak with a bag on his head, barefooting, and crushed everything in his home. And after 2 days, they told that Father Stepan Podolchak died. Russians tortured him to death for one reason, because previously he refused to transfer his church to Moscow Patriarchy, because he told, I can't break my oath and my congregation. So you can ask me why Russians killed this priest. The answer is simple, because they could. This is what occupation is about. So no doubt that people in Ukraine dream about peace, but simply don't want to be occupied. And we see what Russians are doing with the people who have no weapon to defend themselves. I mentioned that I was in Kiev during the first months of Russian invasion. When Russian troops were pulled out from the Kiev region, we immediately were able to send mobile groups to Bucha, Matyzhin, Borzel, Irpin, and other cities and settlements. We were shocked. Even knowing what's going on, there is a huge difference to know what's going on and to see it on your own eyes. We were shocked because we found dead bodies of civilians, men and women, lay scattered around the streets until their liberation. We found dead bodies of civilians in the gardens of their own households. We found dead bodies of civilians in mass graves with their hands tied under their back with the horrible signs of torture. We found dead bodies of civilians in civilian cars, the whole families with children, who were deliberately shot while they tried just to escape from this dangerous zone. Please remember, this is what Russians are doing with unarmed people. So no doubt that we, even being a human rights lawyer, asking for weapons. Because we want not just to document these crimes, we want to stop it.
You mentioned the violations in the occupied territories, but we know that it's impossible to enter these territories, to get access to these territories. how is it nevertheless possible to collect material, to collect witness stories, and to prove what happened there?
We live in 21st century, and we have digital tools which we can't even dream 30 years ago during the Balkans War. These digital tools provide us an opportunity to restore what happened, to communicate with people in a secure way who live under occupation, to identify perpetrators, to collect and to save evidence. Probably you heard about the work of such organization as Bellingcat. The work of Bellingcat convincingly proved that very often when you make investigation and try to restore what happened, there is no necessity even to be on the spot. We use different sources of information. We analyze open data with a further verification. A lot of information are in Russian channels and social networks. We interviewed people who became victims of war crimes and managed to leave these territories. We sent mobile groups to the occupied territories, and people there have connection and relatives with people who live under occupation. So we use different methods. And for sure, we can't track every individual story. It's impossible. But we have a lot of information. This is the most documented war in the human history, and we see the trends. Let me tell you about one of these trends. We have, under Russian occupation, 1,600,000 Ukrainian children. Their identity are erased. They prohibited to speak Ukrainian language, and they know that their parents will be persecuted if they will show their dedication to Ukrainian culture. They study on Russian textbook, and in Russian textbook, Ukraine does not exist as a state. And they totally militarize, starting from the kindergarten. For example, their parents are forced to give their children to special camps on a regular basis. In these camps, Ukrainian children marching, live in barrack, lining up, wearing new military uniform, and studying how to use weapons. Russia is preparing a new generation of Putin's soldiers from these 1,600,000 Ukrainian children. And this is not just human rights problem. This is security problem. Because in the age of 14, these children forcibly received Russian passport. In the age of 18, these children forcibly recruited to Russian army. What does it mean? This means that these Ukrainian children with erased identity, being militarized, they will go to fight and to die to any country which Russia sent them to go to fight and to die. So I always, when I speak about children under occupation, I want people to understand if we will give up and do nothing to protect Ukrainian children under Russian occupation, when they will become adult, they will come for us.
At the same time, there are more and more women, Ukrainian women, who join the army. And the motivation is sometimes because they just see that there aren't enough soldiers, that the army has problems to get enough personnel, or the reason are witnesses, that they are witnesses of violence, of cruelty, or they are or have been victims, and it's kind of revenge. And what these women tell us is that the army, the Ukrainian army, isn't ready for them. It's very difficult to fight in the ranks of this army because unfortunately, they noticed a very Soviet thinking in the army, still a very Soviet thinking. What does this tell you about the military of your country?
We are a nation in transit. We are not perfect democracy. Our state institutions are not still enough strong and effective, for obvious reason. We are ancient nation, but young country. We was 3 centuries a part of Russian Empire. And for 3 centuries, all government in my country wasn't elected by Ukrainians. It was appointed by Moscow. So just 3 decades ago, we got a chance to restore our independence. Just 12 years ago, we got a chance to build sustainable and effective democratic state institutions because revolution of dignity happened and pro-Russian authoritarian corrupt regime of President Yanukovych had been collapsed. So no surprise, we have just 12 years. And people in Germany probably don't remember because you inherited your system from your grandparents, but you know from your history that it takes time to make democratic transition. And it's not easy even during the peaceful time. We are not in a peaceful time. We are in time of the war. But we are moving in the right direction. And let me take this example. In 2014, my friend, Andriana Susak, left her 6-year-old son and joined Ukrainian army volunteeringly. Because, as she explained, I have to fight for my son's peaceful democratic future. I don't want to give this burden for my son when he will be adult. And then when she demobilized after several years of fighting, she and her other colleagues from army created a civil initiative, Invisible Battalion. Invisible Battalion, it was like a metaphor for Ukrainian women in army, because army was totally unprepared. For 10 years, we have no special uniform for women in army. They have to pay money and to sew this uniform individually. And now we have in army more than 70,000 Ukrainian women. Once again, it's not obligatory for women in Ukraine to join army. This means this 70,000 Ukrainian women joined because they want to protect their country, their families, and their democratic choice. And because among them there are several my close friends, I know the motivation. And let me illustrate it, just for you to understand this feeling. My colleague, Diana Wong, she was journalist, and she was in Chernihiv, first months of large-scale war. Chernihiv is a city near Kiev, more close to Belarus, and Russian army destroyed Chernihiv from artillery. And she told that it was so hard for her to observe how her town was destroyed on her own eyes, and she felt learned helplessness because she can do nothing with it. And she decided if she will survive, she will never be a victim, she will be a fighter. And when these territories were liberated and army were pushed back, I mean Russian army were pushed back, she joined to the military brigade which came to release her city. And it was tank brigade. So this very young, very beautiful, like model-looking Ukrainian journalist now serve in the tank brigade. Another story. This is a story of Katerina Zaremba. She is brilliant analytic and Ukrainian writer. But plus to this, she has 4 children. So for me, she is a hero. And when large-scale war started, she had a newborn baby, and she moved to Germany with these 4 children. And then she told, I always felt guilt because I'm not share this destiny with my people. As a mother, I had a responsibility for my children because the biggest child is just 10 years old. But I'm an honest person and I don't want to hide. And when she returned in 2025, she joined Ukrainian army as a paramedic. She told that I'm not fighting, I just try to save people who are fighting. And for me, she's a hero. And her husband as well, because now he takes care about these 4 children. And her observation, she told, our army, it's army of civilians. Just yesterday, these people were hairdressers, journalists, farmers, steel workers, musicians, teachers. For sure, we want to fight. We wasn't born for a war. We just want to live our life and to grow up our children, but we have no other choice. And this is a choice which a lot of people made.
80%, as I know, are civilian people, not professional soldiers in Ukrainian army. And you touched, Oleksandra, one point, what is very moving. When I meet people from Ukraine, I hear it every time. They try, probably there are Ukrainians in this room. Yes, yeah. And probably you know this feeling, to feel guilty. Whatever you do to support your country, to collect money, to collect stuff, medical stuff, whatever, it's not enough. The constant feeling, it's not enough. I suppose, Oleksandra, you by yourself, you know this feeling very well. It's never enough. And this must be a very exhausting feeling. How can one handle this kind of guilty it's not enough?
It's a very important question. I start to think about it not just on my personal example, because you are totally right. When we have air alarm in our mobile phone, now I switch it off not to be interrupted, because Russia regularly bombarded Ukraine with rockets and drones. And when I at home, I'm not popularize this behavior, but I even don't go to bomb shelter. Only when Russia sent dozens of ballistic rockets, then I go to bomb shelter, because once again, it's not good behavior, don't do like this, but this is my way how to return control of my life, because I don't want to live in bomb shelter, because it's constantly happening. And when I abroad and I hear this air alarm, I start to be worried, and I ask myself, but being at home, don't even go to bomb shelter, what's the problem? And then I understood this is a very human to share a danger with people whom you love. You can't stop these rockets, but you want to share these dangers, to be with people whom you love during this lottery, because you never know, probably it will be your residential building who will be hit this night. And but I start to think about this question when people in different countries start to ask to myself what we can do. And I notice that people who ask this question, they are those people who have already done a lot. And I start to think, why are they asking me? And then I understood, they ask me different question. They ask me how we people, with our human efforts, can stop this bloody war. What we can do, because they feel learned helplessness, because you are doing, but situation just deteriorating, people are dying, and you start to think, what a sense of my efforts? I'm not a god, I'm just human, my efforts are modest. So let me assure you, there is no modest efforts during the large-scale war. All efforts matter. Please continue doing these individual efforts, because without, probably these individual efforts can't stop this war, but without your individual efforts, this horror will never stop. And I remember this Lord helplessness feeling 12 years ago during Revolution of Dignity, when Ukrainians peacefully demonstrated in response of rapid decision of the Russian government to stop Euro-integration process. Millions of people came to the street. And pro-Russian authoritarian government responded with large-scale prosecution. So I launched civil initiative Euromaidan SOS. We brought up several thousands of people to provide legal and other support to persecuted protesters. We worked 24 hours per day, and every day hundreds of people who were beaten, arrested, tortured, accused in fabricated criminal cases passed through our care. And it was time when we faced with entire authoritarian state machine, because paramilitary criminal groups worked with police, courts, and prosecutors. The former president, security service, former government, majority of parliament, they were against peaceful protests. They want to liquidate it, even physically. And people start to feel this helplessness, because they start to ask, what's the way out? What we can do in such situation? And in order to help people to overcome this helplessness, Ukrainian artists made a beautiful series of posters. And one poster, it was poster of drop with the title, "We are drop in the ocean," which means, yes, we are not gods. We are ordinary people, and probably our efforts are modest. But together, we are ocean. Together, we can.
And I remember that whomever I spoke at this time on the Maidan, what was the reason for him or her to come to take part in this protest, the answer was at first corruption, and second, I want that our country joins the European Union. And coming to corruption, there is at the same time, this week ago, a scandal, a big corruption scandal, which includes more and more people coming from the government, ministers, not vice president, but the vice premier minister, and up to the administration of the president. So this is really a huge scandal, and people asking themselves, does this corruption would last until this moment put the whole solidarity of your Western partners at risk? What do you think?
I will start with my personal feelings when this corruption scandal happened. I was furious. I was furious, like millions of Ukrainians, for obvious reasons. We are all donate. We donate a lot to Ukrainian army, to injured people, to people who lost everything. Ukrainian pensioners provide the last grivnas from their small pension for this donation. So emotionally, I was furious, even knowing that it's always happened in every country, especially in the time of the war, with a lack of transparency, that such people who try to misuse their power exist. So it's not a unique Ukrainian example. I was furious. But when we look to the situation from rational perspective, 3 points which I want to share. First, this corruption scandal was based not on journalist investigation, but on official state investigation. This means that state did their work effectively. They revealed the scheme, they stopped the scheme, and they issued arrest warrants. Second, just 12 years ago, during Yanukovych time, it was impossible even imagine such outcome, because top political officials in Ukraine, they were untouchable. So it's irony, but when we're looking through our perspective, for Ukrainian, it's a huge success. It means that we are moving in the right direction. Nobody pretends that we are ideal. And third, this state investigation was possible only because several months prior to this, people in Kyiv, in Lviv, Zaporizhia, Odessa, across the country, went to the streets for peaceful demonstration when Ukrainian parliament tried to limit independence of anti-corruptional bodies. It's not easy to do during the large-scale war. Under constant bombardment, when your priority is survival issues, but people care, and they went to the street and they told, you, parliament, you did mistake. You have to stop your vacation, return to your working seat, and vote everything back. And people succeed. So my main message is believe in Ukraine. Believe in Ukrainian people. We are not ideal. We still have a lot of things to be done in our country. We have just 12 years for this. But we are very sincere in our fight for democracy and freedom. We are paying for this chance to have our country transparent, democratic, and flourishing. The highest price. We're paying for this chance with our own lives.
Would you say there is nevertheless always a temptation by the people in power, let's say, to play their own games? I mean, to be corrupt, to steal money, to follow the old rules. And is this possible because with Donald Trump in power, the United States aren't so closely watching the development in Ukraine when it comes to democracy?
Let's be honest. Rule of law and justice, it's not a priority for Donald Trump administration. It's very naive to think that they will care about this thing in Ukraine. But there is one even important impact of United States policy. Ironically, but Trump's year of negotiation became the deadliest period for Ukrainian civilians since the large-scale war started. How it can be? The peaceful negotiation is going, but numbers of people killed and injured amongst civilians under Ukrainian-controlled part of territories were increasing in 31% according to UN in comparison with the previous year. I will tell you, it's because United States negotiators lost human dimension of this war. It's not a priority in these peaceful negotiations. They discussed natural minerals, Russia's territorial claims, geopolitical interests, even Putin's vision of Ukrainian history, a great historic Putin. But they don't care about people. We still have no idea what will be with dozens of thousands of Ukrainian children illegally deported to Russia. What will be with dozens of thousands of Ukrainian civilians illegally detained in Russian prisons? What will be with people under occupation in general? We speak about millions, and they live in gray zone. They have no tools how to defend their rights, their freedom, their property, their life, their children, their beloved ones. And it's a pity because any peace negotiation, it's always a window of opportunity to solve urgent humanitarian questions. But if they're not priority, you don't even use this window of opportunity, because there is a huge difference to know that we can't release people under Russian occupation by military force and do nothing even to trying to protect them. It's a huge difference. So I think that we must be more vocal about human dimension of this war. This war is not just geopolitics. This war is about people. And while United States will not return human dimension, they will never find a path to sustainable peace.
After the meeting in Alaska between Putin and Trump, there was an impressive effort by the European and Western partners to reconvince Trump to do more for Ukraine, to come back to Ukraine's side, and not to take side of Putin. To be honest, I'm waiting for an initiative similar to this, like this in last summer, that European partners try to get a place at the negotiation table. Is this what our government, the European partners, should try more effectively?
Germany and European Union are trying. The problem is that you are not seen as an equal partner. What do I mean? When I mentioned that people in Germany, people in other well-developed democracies, they inherited their democracy from their parents, grandparents, let's say like this. I also have to mention that you was blessed to have security for granted for 4 generations. You didn't pay for your security. It was United States who provides security umbrella. And now this time was finished, and President Trump is very open about this. And it seems to me, it's my interpretation, that they don't see you as an equal partner because they think that you are weak. Because only now, European countries on the 4th year of large-scale war start to think how they will protect their own countries when Russia decided to attack them. And why I use when but not if? Because Russia started this large-scale war, not because they want to occupy just one more part of Ukrainian land. Russia started large-scale war because they want to occupy and destroy the whole country and move further. He sees Ukraine as a bridge to Europe. The logic of Putin is historical, not transactional, as President Trump thinks. He dreams about his legacy. He wants to forcibly restore Russian empire. He don't care about hundreds of thousands of soldiers who have already died for tiny Ukrainian cities, Avdiivka, Bakhmut. Human life is the cheapest resource for Russian state. This means that people in Germany, people in other European countries, they are safe only because Ukrainians are still resisting and don't let Russian army to move further. We provide you time to be prepared with the hope that when you become stronger, Russia will not attack you because Putin is coward. He attacked Ukraine because he thought that we are weak and will be a pleasant trip for him. We just would last in for 3 or 4 days and everything will finish. I believe in Europe more than President Trump. And that's why I ask you, please keep trying to be on this negotiation table. Because if you are not on the table, it means that you are in menu.
Our chancellor, the German chancellor, is visiting China in these days and trying to convince President Xi to convince President Putin to stop the war. What's maybe useless, to be honest. Should we admit that the autocrats have taken over?
I'm grateful for this try. I don't think it will lead to a result, but it's very good that Chancellor Merz openly announced this to Xi Jinping. It's important. I don't underestimate this gesture. The problem is that we deal with the entire authoritarian coalition. Ukrainian cities are constantly being shelled, not just by Russian rockets, but also by Iranian drones. China helps Russia to avoid sanctions and to import technologies critical to warfare. North Korea sent to Russia more than 1 million artillery shells and started to send their troops to Russia. All these regimes have something in common. All these regimes, which captured power in their own countries, they have the same idea what a human being is. They see a human being as an object to be controlled. They denied people in their rights and freedoms. Democracies, even not being ideal, they still see people, their rights and freedoms to be the highest value. And there is no way to negotiate it, because only existence of free world always provide a threat for dictators that they will lose their power. Because even in their own countries, their people still have this intent to be free. And they can be inspired by our example. So that is why, if authoritarian regimes cooperate and support each other, it's so important for democratic countries to support each other even stronger. And that is why I feel a lot of pity when last year, on the anniversary, third anniversary of large-scale war, I saw that Russia, Belarus, North Korea, and United States voted together against Ukrainian resolution. I would never imagine to see United States near the North Korea. It shows that we have a tremendous shift in the world.
Can you tell us how it is possible not to lose hope?
I can have a joke that I'm optimist for obvious reason, because I do human rights work for 20 years. If I will not be an optimist, I will not survive, because it's not easy to be human rights lawyer in Ukraine. It's not Switzerland, believe me. But I think that we have to define the word hope properly. Hope, it's not a confidence that everything will be fine. Hope, it's a deep understanding that all our efforts have meaning.
You have been the Nobel Prize winner for 3 years. What does it mean for you personally? How does it feel? Like a new profession?
It's additional work. Because Nobel Peace Prize, it's not a word, it's responsibility. let's be honest, we was given a Nobel Peace Prize during the war. It sounds surreal. This war is very bloody. The Nobel Peace Prize provides the opportunity for human rights voices to be heard. So it's a huge responsibility to use this opportunity. And that is why now one part of my work is that I'm constantly traveling. In 22 of February, I was in Copenhagen. In 23 of February, I was in Berlin. In 24 of February, I was in Paris. In 25 of February, I arrived finally to Frankfurt, and thanks God, at least I have no need to get up at 4 o'clock this morning again and go to airport. Thank you, it's because of you, because of this public event. I'm not complaining, but it's not life which I want to have, because I lost everything which I can call normal life. Sometimes I have a feeling that I live in airport, but I don't know what country. But it's a responsibility, and we face with a challenge which we can't solve in national borders. We need international involvement. Even with my field of work, justice, we need to create international accountability mechanism like special tribunal on aggression. And while we have essential step last year, when in June the Council of Europe announced the creation of special tribunal for aggression, we still haven't Germany on the board. So I have to come to Germany to speak with your politicians and ask them for what they are waiting for. Half of a year has already passed. Do they wait that impunity will just vanish? It will not vanish, it just become more serious. So I hope that when next time I will come to Germany, Germany will be a member of Special Tribunal on Aggression.
And unfortunately, there is no office where you can give the Nobel Prize back. I know a person who would take it.
We have never dreamed about Nobel Peace Prize. I have no idea that someone nominated us for Nobel Peace Prize. I got information that Nobel Committee devoted this Nobel Peace Prize to us when I was on my way in Poland to railway station with 2 big suitcases. And when my colleagues told me that it was announced that we are winners of Nobel Peace Prize, I told them, nice joke. And then, just in several seconds, when I saw that my phone became red, I understand, oh my God, it's not a joke, I will miss my train, I have to hurry. So this was my first thought, that now I have to respond to people and I will miss my train, 2 trains to Ukraine, because now it takes 2 trains to get from Poland to Kiev. There is no functioning airport in my country, as you know. So, we are ready to give this prize to President Trump if he will provide a sustainable and a just peace for Ukraine.
Okay. I remember that you share the prize with Memorial from Russia, the human rights organization in Russia, and with Ales Bialatsky from Yasna in Belarus. And this wasn't an easy situation because it was a lot of criticism coming from your country, from your fellow countrymen. There is a dispute about are there good Russians anymore? What do you think?
Let me first describe why these critiques emerge in Ukrainian society, because it's not always understandable for international community. When people in Ukraine see in one line Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus, they automatically associate it with this Soviet myth about sisters nations. And people in Ukraine know that it was a huge lie. There is no sisters nations. Only one nation dominate, only one language dominate, only one culture dominate. And that's why they start to criticize this decision. And for us, it takes a lot of efforts to explain that Nobel Peace Prize is not granted to countries. They're granted to people. And we received this Nobel Peace Prize not just with our human rights colleagues, but with our friends, with whom we work tirelessly for all these years of war. Because we have dozens of thousands Ukrainian detained civilians in Russian prison. They're literally dying. I interviewed hundreds of people. They told me how they were beaten, raped, smashed into wooden boxes. Their fingers were cut, their nails were torn away, their nails were drilled. They were electrically shocked through their genitalia. One woman told me how her eye was dragged out with a spoon. So, for some people, there is no chance to be alive till the end of this war. And for us, the only possibility to identify where they are, to provide, if it's possible, some medicine, some parcel, to send independent lawyers, if it's possible, who can't change the verdict, but at least provide information about these people, it's only because we have support of our brave Russian human rights colleagues. And I always tell that I'm very grateful because they face not just repressive Putin's machine, but they are marginals in Russian society. They're against the general public opinion. Putin governed his country not just with repressions and censorship, but with a state myth about Russia, and let's say a special social contract between Kremlin's elite and Russian people. And the core of this myth, the core of this contract, is so-called Russian glory. And the problem is that the vast majority of Russians still see their glory in forcible restoration of Russian Empire. And you know what? We know why. Because they have never been punished. Because when Nazi war criminals were tried on the Nuremberg Tribunal, Soviet Gulag was never condemned or punished for all crimes which Soviet Gulags committed against other nations, which was under their power. So it's difficult to imagine with people with a healthy psyche, but majority of Russians believe that they have legitimate right to invade another country, to kill people there, to erode their identity, and to steal their children. They believe that Ukrainians have to be either re-educated as Russians or killed. This is the choice. So when I ask my Russian human rights colleagues how I can help you, because they're doing their work under constant threat to be killed and jailed by themselves, my Russian human rights colleagues always answered, if you want to help us, please be successful. Because only success of Ukraine and defeat of Russia can do something with this imperialist culture of Russian people, to put them to very painful rethinking that probably they can find their glory in Russian ballet, in developing their country, in their nature, I don't know, in new technologies, but not in killing other people in other countries. So please be successful. It's a request not of Ukrainian human rights defenders, it's a request of Russian human rights defenders to Ukrainian human rights defenders.
Thank you very much. And I would say now it's your turn. If you have questions, let us know. it's a possibility. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm very grateful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sabine.
So, we have a microphone. Wir haben ein Mikrofon. Sie können die Fragen auch auf Deutsch stellen. Sehr gern. Ich versuche das zu übersetzen hier. Und ja, Sie könnten loslegen. Da ist eine Frage.
Hello, my name is Ola, and I'm a fellow Ukrainian living here currently in Germany. And as a mother, I was touched to the bottom of my heart by the story of the 10-year-old child who was dying in the embrace of the mother, who actually did everything to save him. As a mother of a child, actually a 10-year-old boy, who is currently here in Germany, I think I share probably a conflict in my heart between the safety of my child and the future of him as a Ukrainian. So I double-checked, and you said that 1.6 million of children are currently in Russia, and the same amount of children are currently being spread out in Europe. From one side, it's an enormous opportunity for Ukrainian children to get educated in the best of European values. At the same time, it's the identity crisis for them as well, because they are exposed to the countries where they live and very little to Ukrainian. Actually, most of them continues to speak Russian. So my question to you is, how will you, as a Ukrainian, or how do you think as a Ukraine, should tap into this opportunity? Because the war is not only a crisis, it's also an opportunity to educate these kids and to provide them with the best. But what do you do as a country or as a representative to bring not only the children from Russia to Ukraine, but these children who are now spread out in Europe back to Ukraine to make Ukraine great? Thank you.
Not easy question to answer, but I will try. I will start with my personal story, because being a part for Russian Empire for 3 centuries means that Ukrainian identity for 3 centuries was under threat. And people always have to make a choice, either to be Ukrainian and to be under this threat, or to choose identity. Not easy choice to do. And I was born in a Russian-speaking family. My first language was Russian. And I was born in Soviet Union. When I was 7 years old, fortunately, this totalitarian monster collapsed. And I got a chance to study real Ukrainian history in schools, not artificial version which was produced by Soviet scientists. And I started to learn about Yemsky decree, about Valuevsky law, which prohibit Ukrainian language even during the Russian Empire times. And then, reflecting about this, I suddenly understood that I was born not in Russian-speaking family, but in forcibly Russified-speaking family, because native language of my father was Ukrainian. But my father decided to be a doctor, and all education was only in Russian in school and universities. And even more, if you continue to speak Ukrainian language, you will never make a career and you will be treated as secondary person. And my father, he's not fighter. Not everyone obliged to be fighter. He just don't want to be secondary. And that's why he switched to Russian. And that's why my first language was Russian. And when being a child in a school, I understood that my native language was stolen from me. I decided to return to my native language, and since this time I speak Ukrainian. I know Russian brilliantly, probably even more better, because it was language of my first years of life. But my native language is Ukrainian, and I make a choice of my identity. So unfortunately, now there's millions of Ukrainian children who went to Australia, to United States, to Czech Republic, to Germany. They will face with the same choice. And this choice will be done by them independently. And you ask me what we can do as a state. I can't answer for the state. I'm not state representative, but I can say you what I'm doing as a person. Last year, I launched mentorship program. And I spent a year with 63 mentees. And 70% of these young people was Ukrainians who became refugees after 2022. They're students in Germany, in France, in United States, in South Korea, in Abu Dhabi. So geography is very huge. And this fact that I selected among these 63 people, 70% people abroad shows that they were very insistent in their application. And that fact that they sent this application being in Abu Dhabi showed that they still want to keep connection with Ukraine. And this mentorship program for them, it was just one of methods how to do it. So let's be Ukrainians. We, as I mentioned before, has never have a luxury to rely on effective state institutions. So don't wait. Let's organize our own initiatives, how to help our children to maintain connect with Ukraine. Because it will be their choice. The world is open for them. Youth are always bright of any nation. They can live whatever they want, but they can be Ukrainian. It's not words. I know what does it mean since my childhood.
Dear Oleksandra, dear Sabine, thank you very much for your presentation, for your speech. Yuri Didevich, GIZ Hospital Partnership Program. We are supporting the Ukrainian healthcare system through partnerships between German and Ukrainian healthcare institutions. Just one small remark. Hessen was the first Bundesland who opened a project with 17 schools where Ukrainian language is being taught as a second international language. So you can officially learn Ukrainian as second language in German school, for example, at Ernst Reuter Gesamtschule. Yeah? My wife is teaching the Ukrainian, so I know that well. And last week, Süddeutsche Zeitung produced an article about this project. So thank you very much, Hessen. That was a small disclaimer. I would ask you, Oleksandra, vice versa. Germany helps Ukraine, but what can offer Ukraine to Germany? What can, to your mind, what can learn Germany, not Ukraine, not give, but what could Germany learn from Ukraine for its future? What would be your points? And what personally for me interesting is, what could Germany learn from Ukraine in the medical sector, if you know? Thank you.
I will try to answer, but it's not my field of expertise. I think that our main lessons learned is that people have power. We get used to thinking through the categories of states and inter-states organizations, but ordinary people have a much greater power than they can even imagine. And this is a basis for everything. Let me illustrate it with a story. This is a story of Ukrainian scholar and philosopher Igor Kozlovsky, who spent 700 days in Russian captivity. I interviewed him. As you know, before this, I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people. They told me horrible details of torture, so it was little that could surprise me. But Professor Igor Kozlovsky mentioned a detail which was insignificant to the evidence base, but it struck me deeply. He described how he was kept in solitary confinement in a tiny cell in basement with no window, no light, no fresh air. It was difficult for him to breathe. Sewage flows on the dirty floor, and through the opening of the sewage, rats were crawling down. And this detail, which impressed me, this well-known scholar in my country told me how he gave lectures on philosophy to these rats, just in order to hear a sound of human voice, because he was kept alone for months and months. And legally, Professor Kozlovsky was a victim because he was illegally abducted, detained, kept in inhuman conditions. He was tortured so severely that he had to relearn how to walk again. But he told me that all his experience, it's not a reason for him to treat himself and to experience himself as a victim. Because foundation of our existence is dignity, not victimhood. And dignity is action. We are not hostages of circumstances. We are participants of this historical process. And dignity provides us a strength to continue our fight, even in unbearable conditions. So I think this is what Ukrainians can share with people in Germany. And according to medicine, I think that if before Ukrainian psychologists, Ukrainian surgeons, Ukrainian doctors went abroad to study from their colleagues in other countries how to do their work, I will not be surprised that when we will have sustainable peace, medical staff, medical experts from Germany, from Switzerland, from United States, from South Africa, from Brazil will come to Ukraine to study our experience.
Hello. I think peace has to do with compromise and different interests. I never heard anything from you how to go to the other side and to make compromise. You spoke of winning, of succeed. I think the idea is push Russian out, but this is not possible, and I think it's not the way to the peace. What is your way to the peace, going a step to the Russian and then ask for an answer.
Thank you for your question. Let me tell something about wishful thinking. Some people still think that if Ukrainians will give up the part of Ukrainian territories, Russia will stop. It's not so. Let me remind, in 2014, when Russia occupied Crimea and part of the eastern regions, Ukraine has zero chance to release its territories, and Ukraine signed 2 peace deals with Russia. How Russia used these 8 years of so-called peace? Russia violates ceasefire almost daily. People were dying with any consequences for Russia. Russia transferred Crimea and other territories into powerful military base. Russia produced artillery, shells. Russia recruited forcibly Ukrainian men from occupied territories to Russian army. Russia prepared the economy for the next wave of sanctions, trained their troops, and started large-scale war. Because Russia started this war not just to occupy one more part of Ukrainian land. Russia started this large-scale war to return their influence over the whole Europe. This is the Putin's goal. Another is wishful thinking. And unfortunately, after 4 years of this bloody large-scale invasion and 12 years of wars as such, Putin doesn't refuse from his goal. Because Russia is an empire. An empire has a center, but has no borders. It's not my words. I just quoted Putin, who told that borders of Russian empire, Russian state, he mentioned, borders of Russian state has never ended. So this is a nature of empire. If empire has energy, empire tries to expand. If empire has no energy, empire just will wait to get this energy and to start everything again. So the question you ask is not easy to answer because there is no magic button. We can't magically do something with imperialist culture of Russia. It needs times. But how to stop this bloody war? Because we are dying. I worked with people affected by this war directly. I know that people in Ukraine dream about peace. They just don't want to be occupied and don't want to have just a pause when Russia retreated, regrouped, and started large-scale war again. So there is no magic button, but it can be decisive joint action of Ukraine, United States, and European Union to make a price for war, for Putin, higher than price for peace for Putin. What do I mean? The war is profitable for Putin. War provides for him excuses for all internal problems. They can easily explain this, not because he corrupt and manage Russia badly, but because we are fighting with enemy. War centralized his power and mobilized electorate behind his figure. And war, unfortunately, become profitable for Russian citizens. Let me explain this with a historical example. During Soviet time, when Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, Soviet families started to receive coffins. And it's resulted in negative resonance in society and Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan. Russians learned these lessons. Now, when Russian families received coffins of their relatives killed in this war, they received a lot of money. Russia pretends to be great, but Russia is very poor. Majority of people in Russia live in unbelievable poverty in their depressive regions. For them, to join Russian army, it's the only existing social lift. because they start to receive money which they can't even dream in their depressive region. Even more, our Russian human rights colleagues told me that when this person will be killed in this war, his family received money which this concrete person couldn't earn even if he would work till the end of his life. So our Russian human rights colleagues call this type of economy necronomy. Necronomy. They sell death because they still have oil and gas, which means a lot of money. Because Germany also still on the second place of countries whose business are on trade with Russia, because of all other things which help Russian economy to feed this war. I'm not an economist, but it's not a question that your government or government of United States don't know what has to be done to decrease the potential of Russian economy to feed this war. Because when Russians start to receive just coffins without money, it will change everything. It will change everything. They know what has to be done. They just have to do it. To confiscate Russian frozen assets. To change national legislation and start to arrest this shadow fleet, which Russia used to bypass sanctions and transfer oil and gas. It's not shadow. Even students from Norway identified these ships. It's a question just of bravery and honesty. So I will not tell other steps, which even confident for human rights lawyer. I just tell that there is no magic button, but we all in this boat, regardless either are in EU or temporarily outside. And we all have to do more to stop this bloody war. Let me finish on some positive note.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
People very often ask me what gives me strength to do this work for 12 years already, which is not easy work, frankly speaking, to deal with human pain on a daily basis. And I remember that being a student in law faculty, I told to myself that I would never ever do something which connected with criminal law, because I have empathy, I have a lot of love to people, and this criminal law will harm me. And as you know, now I'm dealing not just with criminal, but with international criminal, international humanitarian law, with the most horrible atrocities which just can happen. And that's why I need attention of the entire international community. And what I understood from this story, that something which we feel as our vulnerability, it's our source of strength. Because I still can do this work only because I have empathy to people, only because I love people. So I want you to leave this meeting with this deep understanding that we are much more resilient than we even think about ourselves. And our future is not just unclear, it's also not pre-written. This means that we still have a chance to fight for future, which we want for us and for our own children. Thank you very much. Thank you. Danke, Sabine.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you, Oleksandra Matwijtschuk. I think you are a fantastic ambassador, not just for Ukraine, but for humanity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Vielen, vielen Dank. Wir haben eine Menge Anregungen bekommen. Wir können jetzt sicherlich auch noch ganz lange weitersprechen. Aber ich glaube, alle sind ganz voll von diesen unglaublich klugen Gedanken und Eindrücken. Und vielen, vielen Dank, dass Sie hier waren, dass Sie so aufmerksam zugehört haben, mitgedacht und mitgelitten haben, vielleicht auch manchmal. Und Dankeschön für diesen wundervollen Abend und Dankeschön, Oleksandra Matwijtschuk. It was a really great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Dankeschön.